This is my 1966 Dodge Monaco 500. 440, automatic, bucket seats and console. But she's been leaking a little more fluids and maybe even burning them more than I would like it to. So today, let's open up this power barn and see what we can find. Maybe see if we can remedy some of those oil leaks and fluid leaks and, you know, all that good stuff. But anyways, you're watching Lambvinskis Garage. Let's get it. So I've been driving this car more recently, and, you know, I check the fluids every time I drive it like a good owner should. And, you know, it's just, I haven't had to put any oil in it yet. I've put maybe 400 miles on the car, but it's just above the add mark, and it was at the full mark when I started. So, you know, it's going somewhere. But let's get this hood open and see what we find. So, there she is, a 440 with a thermoquad. It's a 73 440 with motorhome heads, which, I mean, this thing doesn't make big power, but it does make lots of torque, and it sounds really cool, and that's all that really matters to me. This is a cruiser, not a race car. But anyways, yeah, we've got a little bit of what appears to be a coolant leak, which I didn't know this had. But let's raise this thing up and see if we can see where our leaks are coming from. Now that she's up in the air, we can really look. This car's been here for 14 or 16 hours inside. I didn't let it warm up too much, but warmed it up, brought it in, parked it, went inside. And this is what it's left me with. There's a puddle of coolant coming from somewhere. There's a puddle of oil coming from somewhere. And a puddle of transmission fluid coming from, well, you guessed it, somewhere. But I would have to assume that leak is coming from right here, because that looks like a spot it would leak from. Anyways, I put the expensive rear main, the billet aluminum one in this, and, you know, now it doesn't look like it's leaking from there, but from other places, because the starter's wet. And then over here, if you look up, it looks like we're wet up here. So it's probably leaking from a valve cover, maybe? And the coolant leak, you know, haven't quite figured that one out yet. But there was a little transmission leak here. It looks like it's still got a little bit, but I tightened it up the other day, and it subsided. But, oh, looks like we might have a little bit here from this hose. So I can go around, tighten all this stuff up, and I'll pick you back up. Now, I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but I just went around and tightened up all of these bolts, and this one was exceptionally more loose than any of the other ones. It was actually these two. So that could be part of that problem. I'm going to wipe up all of this oil when I get done, and then maybe I'll go for a drive, depending on the weather. I don't know. It's supposed to get kind of crappy real soon. Now, due to some further investigating using my expert detecting skills, it looks like that is where a lot of our oil is coming from. This thing has brand new valve cover gaskets that I put on last year at some time. It's also got an aluminum radiator because the original was, you know, really overheating this thing, and I'm way too cheap to get that record. And a lot of people said, oh, just take it to a radiator shop and get it record. And it's like, well, you know, that's really, really expensive, and I can't afford that. But this one came from eBay for a whopping $135 shipped, if I remember right. Now, both of these radiator hoses, this one has a little bit of wetness right here, and then the upper one, I brought this thing down earlier and I felt it, and there is a bit of wetness up there as well. I've never retightened any of the hoses, so it could probably use a retighten. We'll see how loose they are and get back to it. Now, another thing we should look at while we're here is to pull this inspection cover off and see if it's full of oil, because then that'll really tell us if our rear main is still leaking. Well, take your bets now. Am I going to be cursed with a forever leaking rear main seal on this 440, or is it going to be okay? Oh, great. Well, there isn't as much as I thought there'd be, but there is still some in there. That's disappointing and kind of annoying when you spend a few $100s on that stuff to get it all right, and it still isn't right. But anyways, I can live with a little bit of oil leaking. I don't drive this thing long distances or for very long at a time, so generally it's maybe a couple hours, and it'll do that. That's not a big deal. But we need to spray our brake clean on these and get our other stuff cleaned up so we can really see where this thing's leaking. Well, fart me a lullaby, because that, believe it or not, was loose. Huh. Imagine that. Huh. And would you imagine that? This one was loose too. They both took a little bit of cranking. Not much, I don't want to break those, but they were both physically loose. I could feel them in this ratchet. So, next thing, let's pop this lid off, and then let's go back and retighten all of our valve cover bolts too. A note here, you want to be careful when you tighten those, because you can bend that sheet metal. They bend really easy. Now, another thing I would like to look into is this thermoquad. I don't know anything about them. I am mostly a Carter or Edelbrock guy, and yes, I know this is a Carter, but this is not the same as an AVS or whatever you want to call them, a 1406. So, it has some starting issues from time to time. When it's cold, I can get it to start pretty easy. But when it's hot, it doesn't like to start. And with any luck, I will show you that in this video. Alright, so I've got my handy-dandy quarter drive ratchet here with a super long extension. And I'm just going to go hit all of these and tighten them up if they need tightened up, which I would assume they do. So, that one's okay. That one definitely needed some. That one needed some. That one was okay-ish. That one needed some. And then this back one might be a little tougher because I don't have the good quarter drive set here, so I don't have a real short extension. But let's see if I can get in there. Oh yeah. This brake booster's only a little in my way. Oh, and this one feels like it needs quite a bit. There. So, I'll spray all that down on that side of the head with some brake clean or something, see if I can get that oil mess to go away. And then I'll go do the other side too, which I guess I can do right now. I can move you over a little bit. Alright, on to the other side that's got even more stuff in the way, including the distributor and heater lines. Oh, that one's loose. That one was really loose. Now remember, don't go too tight on these because they will warp and bend, which is not good because then they'll leak even more. But if this could leak more, we would probably be out of oil. I'm kidding. It doesn't leak that bad. But it does leak enough that it annoys me, so. Yeah, see, those all needed some. And a way you could remedy these is putting aluminum valve covers on, or a cork gasket, or good gaskets in general. I naturally went with the cheapest because it's what I could afford. So, anyways, those are tightened up. I'll clean that up, and then let's look at this carburetor. We'll get this thing fired up, because I know you're just dying to hear it. Another thing I have not done is look at these spark plugs since I put new ones in. And so we'll get a board out, we'll put them all up in order and all that good jazz. So then we can take a look at them, see if we're burning oil, how this thing's running. I would assume it's a little rich because that's a really big carburetor. And I don't run this thing that hard very often. The last trip I made was 120 miles, well, the last big trip I made, and filled it up when I left, filled it up when I got back, and this thing got 17.6 miles to gallon. And if that's not impressive, then I really don't know what is. Now, let's get in here and get these plugs pulled. Take your bets, and we'll see how this thing's running. Do you think it's going to burn oil? Do you think it's going to burn anything? You think it's going to be rich, lean? I think it's going to be rich, and I think it's going to burn oil on that side. Because, hi Adam, this thing has dual exhaust on it, and it is true dual, and so they don't have an X or an H or anything in it, and that side smokes a little bit on startup, and this side's usually pretty clean. So I could be completely backwards though, you never know. So here is the driver's side plugs, starting with number 1. Yes, they are all carboned up, and they're rich. Number 3 actually looks a bit wet and smells gassy, so there's a real good possibility that it wasn't firing, but I didn't feel or hear any misses. I'll clean all these up and put them back in later, but yeah, they're all carboned up, but otherwise, they look fairly good. I think maybe I just have to run her a little harder, get out and stretch her legs some more, you know? But we could also rebuild this carburetor, which I'm going to tackle in another video, because I don't know anything about these, and I would like to watch some tutorials on how that thing works before I, just jump into it. And there we have the plugs for the passenger side. And they are all kind of ugly as well. But then there's this one that's exceptionally ugly and wet and really carboned up. So I have a feeling number 8 is our one that burns the oil, the fluids, the little bit of everything. It could be valve seals, it could be rings. Who knows? This thing is, the engine's at least 51 years old, and the car is older than that. So, of course it's going to leak some oil. It's going to burn some oil. That's okay. One of these days, I will either rebuild this 440 or build a period correct one to go in this car. But for now, we're just going to enjoy it. I'm going to clean all of these up. And for the record, I am using Autolite 85s. And they seem to work pretty well. I've been happy with them. And they're relatively inexpensive compared to, well, most other ones like NGK. Ew, a Ford pulled up. These things sound terrible. But anyways, I'm going to clean these plugs up in the old Cheek Poker 10,000. And then we're going to fire this thing up. I'll show you its secret handshake that it has that I really shouldn't have to do, but I do it anyways. Now that these spark plugs have all been professionally rebuilt and I only got poked in the cheeks 32 times, it's time to re-gap them, and we will put some anti-seize on them and put them back together. I will be gapping these to 0.35. 0.035 is what we're going to be at. And that is pretty much the standard spec for all of the big block Mopars, and kind of Mopars in general. All of these are now successfully re-gapped, and a lot of them, specifically the ones on the passenger side, were closer than the ones on the driver's side. These ones were all about 33 to 35, but this one was like 27, and then like 32 and 31, and then that one was about 34. But they're all correct now, so let's put them in and put it back together. So the last thing I want to check before we fire this thing up is the cap, rotor, and points. This cap does have a bit of scoring in here, but I think it's going to be okay. The points actually look really good. They're new, cap's new, everything's new. But let me put this back together. I'll show you the secret handshake that I shouldn't have to do, and then we'll go for a little test drive. So the best way I found to start this thing when it is absolutely stone cold like it is now is to do this 5 times full throttle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this piece here should move up so it puts it into a higher idle. So it's kind of hard to do with one hand, but I'll move it up, and then that closes the choke. And that, you know, doesn't move. It's kind of stiff. So I got to get in there, and I don't know if maybe that's not hooked up right or something. But now this car will start pretty good. So let's start it. Now that started pretty good. It usually doesn't start even that good, but that was not bad. Now she'll just sit here and idle, and it's going to cooperate and be just fine. She was a little smoky. I didn't put any oil down the cylinders or anything. It might have loaded up a little bit yesterday, I'm not sure. But let's take this thing for a spin. See, like I said, it doesn't start as good when it's warm. Heel grow's a little picky, so we'll pop her in neutral first, let that transmission warm up for a minute, and then we'll hit the road. We're not gonna go very far. Hard to back out of these really narrow areas when you don't have a mirror on that side, but I can see out this way, so that's a bonus. You can already tell she seems a little bit happier with those plugs clean. Weather sure has turned terrible. It was in the 70s earlier this week, and now I'm lucky if it's 50 something. Oh yeah, it's starting to sprinkle already. It really is gonna rain on our parade. Oh, great. It's the way I like it. You know, the other day I was driving this thing and the fuel gauge decided it wanted to quit working. So I knew how much fuel was in it, and it's not a big deal. Now the fuel gauge works, but the temperature gauge quit working. That's just how I like to do it, you know. Boy, what I don't like is this rain, though. The last time I used the windshield wipers, they got stuck. I don't mind that this car is out in the rain because it's not perfect, but that window that you're on leaks a little bit. So we might have to be quick. Windshield wipers work pretty good, don't they? Okay, maybe not. It's a fair weather car, all right? Leave me alone. Did I mention this thing has a 276 sure grip? That's really high. But it is a sure grip. It does peel both tires, which is really cool. I'm pretty cheap, but I might want to invest in some wipers. I know, you don't have to tell me. But this is about as far as we're going to go. This is just the local boat launch. I'm going to check under the hood real quick and see if anything changed. Well, everything looks pretty good under here. It sounds good, nice smooth idle. This thing has blue streak glass packs. I don't know if I mentioned that already or not. But they put out a pretty good tone. I like them anyways. But I gotta run to the store real quick and then let's get this thing back inside before it gets soaked. Now, we can't have a big block without having a little bit of fun, can we? Oh, yeah! Woo! Ah, nothing like a little bit of 440. Temperature gauge started working again. Imagine that. Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, how could you not love that? Oh, just so cool. It does help that the roads are a little wet, but that's beside the point. You know, this thing reads that it has half a tank, but I thumped the tank and it didn't sound like it had half a tank in it. But I'm not gonna worry about it. Let's hit the store, then let's go home. Park in my usual parking spot. Okay, I will be right back. Now, let's go over the real reason why I wanted to, you know, do this. is because, well, mainly that, but I'm gonna clean this up real quick, and then we're gonna put the car back in here because, well, it's wet outside, and it's gonna sit overnight again, and we're gonna see if it leaks. And I know it's gonna leak oil, but it shouldn't be as bad now. And I hope that coolant leak went away because it's never had that before. But anyways, I'll get this thing back inside and we'll pick you back up again tomorrow. Now I'm gonna show you something. This thing's showing really hot on the gauge, right? It's way up there in the range. But I've got my handy dandy Houdinkus here, and we're gonna shoot the thermostat, and it's 180. The temperature sender is 160, and the top tank of the radiator is 88 degrees, 90 degrees. Over there, it's 130, and I don't think we'll be able to get the bottom, but it's 130 down there. And I mean, ooh, that's a little on the warm side. But, I mean, just because the gauge says it's hot, doesn't mean it's hot. So that's good to know. I'm okay with 182 degrees. What would be really bad if that was like 220. Then I would probably be concerned. See, now you can tell it's getting hot, and it's kind of da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's idling a little different. There's still some kinks we got to sort out, but I would say that was a pretty successful run, if I do say so myself. Pretty happy with that. I need to go put fuel in it because I don't trust that gauge. You just saw that it said half a tank. Did it really have half a tank? Or is it lying to us? Hello there, and welcome back. It's been, 16 hours or something. Somewhere in there. Let's lift this thing up and see if we have more puddles under here. I'm gonna guess that there's at least slightly less, with any luck anyways. So let's raise this thing up, find out. Well, from a first glance here, I'm gonna have to say that's about 300% better. There's nothing where the coolant was. We got a little bit here, it looks like. A little bit of something. Looks like it might be coming from the oil filter housing now. But I'm not seeing a big ton of leaks coming off of this head up here. Sorry, I'm trying to hold the light and you at the same time. I do have a little bit down here still, which isn't near as bad. And there's still some coming from the transmission. Oh, my light shut off. Lovely. Yep. You can see it right there. But let's check this other side of the head. And it appears to be nice and clean as well. So that's way, way better. I can live with that. Oh, there's a little bit still coming from that fitting, but not near as much. Anyways, that is way, way better. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, what was the point of that? Well, really the point is, these cars don't have to be perfect to go enjoy them. The paint, not perfect. The engine, it leaks, it smokes, but it's not that bad. The transmission leaks, it still shifts fine. You saw this thing take off. It still runs pretty dang good for what it is. But get out there, don't be afraid to look at it, get dirty, and these cars can be picked up for little to nothing. I mean, you have $4 or $5 grand in your pocket, you could get something like this to just go enjoy pretty easy. I don't have a ton of money into this. And, you know, that's just all it takes. A little bit of money, a little bit of time, and you're going to have yourself a good cruiser. Could this thing be better? Absolutely. Do I want it to be better? It doesn't really need to be. It fits everything I want it to do. It doesn't have to be perfect. But if you enjoy it, that's really all that matters. So next time, join us when we dig into that thermal quad because, you know, I'm just tired of this thing starting so bad. But other than that, it's about all I have to say. So, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.